It's on now? Yep. Okay. Good morning and welcome. I'm Dan Wathen, Chairman of the Independent Commission to investigate the facts of the tragedy in Lewiston. I'm joined today by the other members of the Commission, and I'd like them to step up and introduce themselves in this place.
Good morning. I'm Paula Silsby, a former federal prosecutor.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Bader. I'm a retired forensic psychologist.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Rushlow. I was 37 years as a prosecutor and 5 years as a district court judge.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Anthony Ng. I'm a practicing psychiatrist in Bangor, Maine.
Good morning. My name is Ellen Gorman. I'm a former member of the Maine Supreme Judicial Court.
Good morning. My name is Toby Dilworth. I'm a former federal prosecutor in Maine, and I am now in private practice.
I really thank each of these people for being here today and for the work that they've put in and the dedication over the past 9 months. I want to begin this morning by acknowledging the victims, the survivors, and all the family members impacted by the shootings in Lewiston on October 25th, 2023, who are either here today or hopefully watching this on live stream. I would also point out that the report that we just handed out is online now, so it's available generally. None of us can begin to imagine the pain that you people have experienced on that terrible day, nor the hurt with which you continue to live. Despite, or maybe because of, that agony and grief, many of you chose to share your very personal stories with the Commission right here in this room for some, either privately or publicly. We remain impressed by your courage and your resilience, and we thank you for your determination to help this Commission fulfill the mission that the Governor and the Attorney General laid out for us last fall. At our core, this purpose of this Commission was to determine the facts of what happened in Lewiston on October 25th and in the months that led up to it, and the law enforcement response following the shootings. The Commission was asked to conduct its work in public to the greatest extent possible and to issue a formal public report detailing the findings upon the conclusion of their investigation. And that's what we're here to do today. We delivered the report. The Commission was not charged with making policy recommendations regarding access to firearms, to suggest amendments to Maine statutes, or to propose operational changes for government agencies. Those responsibilities properly rest with elected and appointed officials. The Commission's responsibility was to find the facts so that law enforcement, military leaders, the public, and elected and appointed officials can make informed decisions to reduce the risk of such tragedies in the future. The Commission held 16 public hearings, several private meetings, and thoroughly reviewed a great quantity of documents, records, emails, and other information in producing this report. Though we have no authority to sanction or discipline anyone who failed to live up to their duty, we do expect that the facts that the Commission lays out in this report will guide the decisions of those I just mentioned. The Commission also anticipates that many of the facts that we have uncovered may likely serve as the basis for civil litigation. Those matters are to be determined by the court, not by the Commission. On the evening of October 25th, 2023, Robert Card entered just-in-time recreation facility in Lewiston, killed 8 people, and wounded 3 others. He then drove a few miles away to Smenji's Bar and Grill, where he killed 10 more people and wounded 10 others. 18 people would die. 13 people would be wounded. Others suffered physical and psychological injuries. The emotional wounds go much deeper. Indeed, within minutes, the safety and security that we all feel as Mainers was shattered. Robert Card is totally responsible for his own conduct, solely responsible. He caused the deaths and injuries inflicted that night. We will never know if he might still have committed a mass shooting, even if someone had managed to remove his firearms before October 25th. But the Commission unanimously finds that there were several opportunities that, if taken, might have changed the course of these tragic events. First, the Commission affirms what it laid out in its interim report issued last March. The Saginaw County Sheriff's Office had sufficient probable cause to take Card into protective custody under Maine's yellow flag law and to initiate a petition to confiscate any firearms he possessed or over which he had control. The Sheriff's Office is justified in pointing out that the Army Reserve did not share all the relevant information it had about Card's behavior. Nevertheless, under the circumstances existing and known to the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office in September 2023, Maine's yellow flag law authorized it to start the process of obtaining a court order to remove Card's firearms. Second, the Commission finds that the leaders of his Army Reserve unit failed to exercise their authority over him and to undertake necessary steps to reduce the threat he posed to the public. Card's commanding officers knew of his auditory hallucinations, increasingly aggressive behavior, collection of guns, ominous comments about his intentions. Despite their knowledge, they ignored the strong recommendation of Card's mental health providers to stay engaged with his care and take steps to remove weapons from his home. The Army Reserve neglected to share all the information relating to Card's threatening behavior with the Sheriff's Office and discounted some of the evidence about the threat he posed. Had members of Card's Army Reserve unit presented a full and complete accounting of the facts, the Sheriff's Office might have acted more assertively in September. Finally, the challenges faced by law enforcement in responding to the shootings were unprecedented in Maine. While many demonstrated bravery and professionalism in the face of danger, the first hours after the shootings were at times utter chaos as hundreds of law enforcement officers poured into Lewiston and were dispatched or self-dispatched to numerous scenes throughout the area. This report makes some findings about the actions of law enforcement following the shooting, and we recommend that the Maine State Police conduct a full after-action review with an independent evaluation by an entity with policing expertise. A full after-action review will allow for professional recommendations about policy, protocol, and other policing improvements. Each member of this commission remains humbled by the charge that was placed before us. All of us, and surely everyone here, wishes we could go back and change what happened in the months, weeks, and days, and minutes leading up to the tragedy on October 25th. We can't. However, we can look forward. Our investigation and the information and findings set out in this final report are meant to bring truth to the victims' families, to those who were injured, and to the people of our state. We hope this truth will help the healing process while simultaneously enabling the public and policymakers to learn from mistakes. Again, thank you all for being here, and I'll take a few questions.
Mr. Wathen, was there anything that the commission was unable to get through subpoena power in terms of documents or key testimony that limited these findings? We believe that we received everything that we required. There were many requests for documentation from the Army
some of which are still unresolved, but we're satisfied that we have what we need for this. But those so-called TUI requests are still outstanding, and there's still a possibility that they will be received, and if so, they'll go into the archives with the rest of our material. Yep.
We're just learning in this report more details.
He passed it.
Mr. Chair, could you describe some of the challenges that the Commission had in working with the Army and the Army Reserve in sharing information from their own investigation that would also support your report here?
Well, there's a fair degree of bureaucracy involved in the Army, justifiably so. I mean, it's a huge organization, and they have to have rules in order for people to do it. It was very slow. It was very slow in getting responses, but we received responses, and in some respects, we had very good cooperation from the Army. But there were the document requests, and the TUI process was slow, and it's as witnessed by the fact that there's some still outstanding, and that's the nature of the organization. Yeah.
We're just learning in this report more details about Robert Card's discharge from the Four Winds Psychiatric Hospital in New York, and why a court hearing to consider his involuntary commitment was abruptly canceled.
Right.
But it appears like the hospital looked at 6 factors to consider his discharge, including his aggression and his suicide risk and medication compliance. Is it your feeling that those factors were sufficiently evaluated and followed up?
Well, by us, we received the information. We considered it. We actually had an interview with the attending psychiatrist, and because of legal concerns, that wasn't a public interview, but we did have it, and we at least feel that it's acceptable. There will be I'm sure there will be civil litigation, which will draw a finer point on that.
Can you tell us what happened after the public hearing with Patricia Maloney over Zoom that happened, I think it was your last public hearing? Did you hold any behind doors hearings after that to learn more about what happened at Four Winds?
I believe we did, yeah. I mean, I think what I just referred to, the attending psychiatrist was, we worked that out, yeah.
So that was just to follow up, that was after the Patricia Maloney Zoom interview?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I would just like to clarify here, following up. You say that you expect that there will be civil litigation related to the discharge from the hospital,
right.
But unlike some of these other agencies where you've pointed to specific steps they should have taken, I haven't seen anything like that in the report. So just to be really clear here, have you found that the hospital took appropriate steps, or were there alternative systemic failures here when it comes to that discharge?
We set forth the facts as we determined them to be, and they're in the report. And I'd let the report speak for itself in that regard.
Chief Justice Wath and Ben Gideon, who along with Travis Brennan represent the families in the
Right.
mentioned civil matters, will you be sharing the documents that were obtained by the commission and reviewed in connection with your investigation with the public and with the families?
Right. All of the documents, including our notes, everything that we have, is going to eventually into the state archives. And Ann Jordan and Brian McMaster are going to supervise that process of getting it to the state archives, and they'll be shared. I'm sure there'll be some of them that will require a request in the usual court process to determine whether they're confidential or not. Some of them were given to us in a confidential way and said, you cannot reveal these publicly. So, but everything will go to the state archives, and it'll be available there.
Chair, you mentioned the unanimous recommendations, but Could you speak to whether there were any internal debates or disagreements over what this final report entailed or how far to go with it?
No, there were none. We worked very hard, and we had some of the longest editing sessions I've ever participated in my life. And we worked out our agreements, and we worked out very precise language which accurately portrays our collective views, all 7 of us, and the staff was involved in many of these discussions. And so that's why we really want the report to speak for ourselves. I cannot summarize accurately except to say what we found unanimously without disagreement is reflected as fact in that report.
Hi. There's been a lot of discussion about the yellow flag here in Maine.
Right.
Can you clarify what your contact was with the New York State Police and the psychiatric facility, and whether your commission believes the red flag in New York could have been and should have been used?
We considered that, and we we don't reflect that in the report, but I guess I would say from my own personal experience, when police go and someone is taken to the hospital, then the responsibility passes to the hospital at that stage. Police don't, if someone's going to be committed to a hospital, police do not usually follow up with a red flag law or a yellow flag law, because they're in the hospital.
But to follow up, in New York, the law allows for mental health facilities to utilize the red flag law.
Right.
Did the commission believe that should have been used?
You'll see some reference to that in the report about the dispute between the hospital and Keller as to whether the SAFE Act was in place. And you'll see it in the report. It's all fully accounted in there.
But just so I can get that clear, do you believe that the red flag should have been used? Yes or no, I guess.
I don't think that's really my call, whether it should have. My own response would be, he was committed to the hospital, and so that would be it. The hospital may want to do it, or they may want to trigger the SAFE Act in New York, and you'll see in the report every fact that we found about whether the hospital did in fact petition for the SAFE Act or not, and you'll see it all there.
John, and then we're going to wrap it up. Thank you. Question, so you and your colleagues spent more than 9 months on this investigation. You outlined a number of issues with local police, the response by this hospital, by the response by the Army Reserve. You said earlier that your charge didn't include making recommendations, but after all this work you've done, this report effectively is a very long timeline of events. Should you and your colleagues gone further and issued recommendations to respond to these issues that you laid out?
That was a decision to be made by the governor and the attorney general, and we weren't charged with that responsibility. We'd be available to anyone who wanted not anyone, to those two, if they wanted to discuss on a personal level. But I think that those decisions are best made by the elected and appointed public officials and the agencies of state government and federal government.
But if all this work you've done, I mean, like you said, you are all intimately involved with this case, knowledge of this case. Aren't you in the best position to offer those kind of recommendations?
If you look at the title of our appointment, it's the commission to investigate the facts of the Lewiston tragedy. That's what we were charged with. Whether we're in the best position, I would say I'm not in the best position to comment upon policing recommendations because I'm not familiar with policing and I'm not familiar with other aspects of it. But we've found the facts, and from those facts, people will draw their own conclusions. I read this morning in the Portland Press-Herald a op-ed piece where a former Army officer was drawing conclusions as to the changes that should be made in Congress about the supervision of Reserve people, and that it shouldn't be confined just to when they're on duty and on base, that it perhaps should be broader. And that was a very good suggestion. That's one that will rise out of these sorts of fact findings. People will see, this were the facts, what is the recommendation?
Your report is very critical of the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office and of the U.S. Army Reserve folks. As I said, your report is very critical of the U.S. Army Reserve and leaders of the unit that Card was in, and it's also critical of the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office for what they didn't do prior to October 25th. Unless I skimmed the report too quickly and missed it, the report seems rather silent, though, on the performance of the Maine State Police after the shooting, including the manhunt that went on for a couple of days. Are there no criticisms of the Maine State Police that the Commission found, things that they could have done better? And how come the Commission didn't make an after-action report happen in these past 10 months, if you're calling for one now?
In the report, you'll find, I believe, that the fact that the information about the overflow lot came to the state police but was not conveyed to the people who were in charge of the manhunt. That's a fact. That's something that they should address, how that happened. I've forgotten the second part of your question.
You mentioned in your remarks that there should be an after-action report
Yeah.
that more thoroughly finds conclusions about the police performance. How come you didn't do that in the past 10 months or make that happen?
Well, the number one is the Maine State Police conducted an after-action report with the Pennsylvania State Police regarding certain aspects of it, and we received that and had a copy of it. We think that the broader after-action should be done, and we chose to encourage them to do it, and I suspect there will be no doubt that they will do it. And we think that it's appropriate that people with expertise in policing policy, procedure, and protocol should conduct that and make it available, and that's our conclusion. We could have done it, but we weren't appointed to hire people to do things. We were appointed as an independent commission. So we weren't commissioned, we weren't authorized to, we could have done it, but it was inconsistent with the charge.
Even with your subpoena power, was there any agency or individual who did not cooperate or who eluded you, someone you wanted to talk to?
I think we were successful in reaching the people that we wanted to. We got slow-walked, I would call it, in several instances, which is probably the cause of the fact that we were reporting to you 9 months after we began, rather than the 6 months that I foolishly laid out there on the first day. But we were slow-walked. But it was also, some of the delay was caused by, the state police in Maine have never collected so much material as they have on this case, and we received it. And so it was a much bigger, and as you'll see in reading the report, the full report, when you can't really summarize it very accurately, because you have to, in order to get the full set of facts, you really have to read the report, study that timeline. There's a lot of factual information in that timeline, and then look at the observations. And when you put those three all together, then you get the full breadth of the facts, which are really very large. I mean, I've never worked on anything with so much factual information as this presented. So we hope that we have done a service to everyone by setting forth those facts, and so they can look at it, come to their own conclusions. I've been consoling myself with the thought that I think the people in Maine who've been watching the coverage of these hearings, the 16 hearings that we had, I think they've written their own report long ago.
So my question is about policing, and the last two questions were about policing. but the composition of the commission hasn't included active police individuals or folks involved in law enforcement. Was that a limiting factor on your ability to create and do the report? Did that have any impact on what you were able to find? And I wonder if any of your other commissioners would mind responding to the question.
I'll respond. I don't think it had an impact on it because even though there was no one on the commission, we have staff members, Brian McMaster and Jim Osterreiter, who are both veterans of law enforcement in both state and federal. And I don't think anyone is any better grounded in police affairs in Maine than Brian, and I suspect that the same is true of Jim Osterreiter. I've never worked with him before, but he does the most intensive interview I've ever read. I wished I'd have known him long ago. So I think that we were not hindered by that fact, and bear in mind, the governor and the attorney general selected what they felt was appropriate, and we, with the advantage of hindsight, I think they were correct. I think they chose the right people.
You've been working on this commission for 9 months. Can you tell us your personal reaction to details or factors that really stood out for you? Is there anything that really elicited a visceral reaction to you as you went through the work?
My own personal reaction is I'm not highly involved with technology. I mean, I use computers and cell phones. But the one thing that surprised me was, A, the degree to which law enforcement uses technology in a very sophisticated way. And secondly, the thing that really amazed me was the extent to which texting is the medium of communication, both good and bad, within the community. We have texts that were turned over to us, which are very difficult to work with if you've ever tried to do anything with them. But texting is really ubiquitous in our society. And it works to advantage and it works to disadvantage. There's some very bad things came out of the texting right after that. Some things that shouldn't have happened. But also the deaf community was totally reliant upon it for a period of time as the only means they had of finding out what was going on. And so it's like everything, it has its positives and it has its negatives. But technology really struck me as, wow, I didn't realize the extent to which that influences our daily life.
I just wonder if any of the other commissioners would mind commenting on the report or some of the questions that have been asked.
I think you can talk with them on the way out. That's fine. But yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming, and we appreciate your interest and your support during these past 9 months. Thank you.